This is the video notes that go with our guided notes that are titled HOYVUX and Graphing Inequalities Calculator Inactive. Okay, so let's just go back really super quick and review what HOYVUX means. Remember, that is our acronym that helps us remember if we have vertical and horizontal lines, what they look like and what their equation is going to look like. So HOY is for horizontal lines that have zero slope, and the equation or inequality form always has a y and no x. VUX means that you have a vertical line, has undefined slope, and the equation always has x's and it is missing a y. Okay, so our first four examples are going to be examples of HOY, because if you notice, you see Y, but you don't see an X. You see a Y, you don't see an X. Our second page of notes will deal with the VUX, because they will be X inequalities without Ys. We also have an example of each type of inequality, which we really haven't stated, but everybody should know those. And I'm just going to scribble right here. We have less than or equal to. We have greater than and greater than or equal to. And we know there's a fifth one that says not equal to, but we don't really deal with the not equal, okay? They get more specific. Instead of doing not equal, they talk about whether it's going to be smaller, such as the less than, or larger, which is the greater than. Okay, so we're going to look at how we're going to graph all four of these inequalities within horizontal lines and with vertical lines. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so if I look at my first graph right here, y is less than or equal to 2. That means that I'm going to have a y-intercept of 2 right here. So 2 on the y-axis. And it's going to be a horizontal line, so I'm going to lay my ruler down. Really try to make it bold-faced. We're going to remember to put arrows. You have to be really careful with these horizontal vertical lines, getting them bold-faced, because they are sitting right on a grid line, so it makes it a little bit more challenging to see. There we go. Now, we want y is less than or equal to 2. Anything that is on the line is the equal part of the inequality. But now we need to shade the part of the graph paper that is less than 2 on the y-axis. Okay, so we know that everything that is less than 2 on the y-axis falls right down here at the bottom or below the line. Okay, so I'm going to grab a light color. It could be a crayon, a pencil, a highlighter. I'm using a highlighter just because it's a nice broad tip and I can color faster. It's not a coloring contest. You don't have to have it just perfect. Okay, but I'm going to shade that whole part of the graph. Okay, this part of the graph that is shaded is called a half plane, H-A-L-F, half. Now, technically, it's not exactly half of the picture, but what it's saying with the half plane is that it breaks it into this plane, which we know a plane, P-L-A-N-E, in math means that it is a flat surface that we're dealing with, okay? So this graph paper is considered a plane. That line cuts it into 2 slices. We have the top part and the bottom part. Each part is referred to as a half plane. So we're going to shade the half plane that is below my line. Okay? Now, I want to introduce some vocabulary here. This line right here is called a solid line. And the solid line you have because you have the equal to part in your inequality, okay? We also want to talk about the shading. Most people would just say the shading is below the line, okay? The shading is below. Or they may say just shade below, All right, now, think about those vocabulary words, and we're going to talk about them a little bit more in the next problem. Okay, now my next example right here beside this is y is less than -1. So my y-intercept here is -1, so it's right here. Okay, now if I notice this does not have the equal to part on the inequality like I did right here, okay, it's missing the equal to part. So what we're going to do, instead of making a solid line, we're going to make a dotted line. And sometimes that dotted line is referred to as a, whoops, I need a B, broken line. Okay? And what dotted or broken refers to is that there is no equal to. The no equal to is not part of the inequality, okay? Now, easiest way to make a dotted line, because we all know what a dotted line looks like. You know, a lot of times if you've got something and it says cut here along the dotted line, okay? Easiest way to do that is just go right along your paper, just like if we were counting slope or something, and put your dots. Now make your dots big enough that people can see your dots. Don't make them little pinpoints that blend into the paper, okay? So you definitely see my row of dots here. Now I'm gonna make sure that I do put arrows on both ends, okay? So that's what a dotted line is gonna look like. Now, what I need to do now is to do the shading, and my inequality again is less than, so I'm still gonna be shading below. I'm gonna say shade below. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my highlighter and I'm gonna shade all the graph paper below the line, and I'm done. Okay, now again, guys, pause your video if you need to and copy down anything you need to, and then we'll go to the next two examples. Now, our next two examples are similar but different because it's greater than or equal to and just greater than. So let's make an example of that. If I have greater than or equal to, I'm going to have my solid line, just like before with the equal to part. My line is going to go through the y-axis at -3. So right here, lay this down. Again, it's going to be hard. You have to really make sure you get it bold-faced. Okay, so you can see it. Put arrows. Now, since my inequality is greater than, that means I'm going to shade above. Okay, I'm going to shade above. I'll grab my highlighter. And let's just shade above it, really quick and easy. And it doesn't have to be just perfect. You know, make it, don't want it too sloppy, but don't have to be perfect. Okay, and I'm done. Now let's do our fourth one right here. Y is greater than 2. So my y-intercept here is at +2. Now, this one is going to be a dotted line. Okay, so again, I'm going to do like I did on the other one. I'm just going to put some dots going across my paper. There we go. Now, our shading is still going to be above. There we go. Now, shading above it because it was greater than. All right, now go ahead and pause, copy, and then we'll move on to our vertical lines. Now, our next 4 examples, we have the same inequalities, but this time our inequalities are going to consist of those x's. Okay? So we know from HOYVUX, this means I'm going to have vertical lines, and our constant in our equation is going to be our x-intercept. So right here where I have x is less than or equal to 2, I'm going to go to 2 on the x-axis right there. And I'm going to lay this down. It has an equal to part. So just like before, we know our line is going to be solid. Okay, we'll have a solid line. Lay this down. We're going to put arrows on both ends, just like that. I almost missed my axis right there, but we're good. Now, let's talk about the inequality here. Here, I want the part of the graph paper that all of the x numbers are less than 2. Well, this is my x-axis right here. And that means all the numbers on the left side of that line are the ones that are less than 2. So the half plane that I'm going to shade is on the left side of my line, just like that. Okay. So this time my shading to the right. I'm sorry, not right. We went left, didn't we? Sorry about that. Okay. So we're shading to the left. Okay. Now, my next example right here beside it. The biggest difference here, besides the fact the x-intercept is different, I'm missing my greater, I'm missing my equal sign. Okay. So that means this time I'm going to have a broken line. Now notice how sometimes I say broken and sometimes I say dotted, because you know what? You can say either. It's a personal preference, but you need to know both, because you don't know the next people you talk to in about math, which one they're going to use. Okay. Oh my gracious, I just boo-booed. So I made a solid line instead of a dotted line. So let me show you exactly how we can fix that. Okay. So if you have an eraser, you can do this. If you don't, just grab you a bottle of whiteout. And if you accidentally make it solid, you can use a little bit of whiteout or an eraser and take out part of the line and make it look dotted. And I'm going to tell y'all, everybody's going to do this at least once. My bet is that we'll do it way more than once, because this solid and dotted is like one of the 2 biggest mistakes you can make with inequalities that people make. So arrow and arrow, and I have a dotted line now. Now, our shading is still less than, so that means I'm shading to the right. So the shading is going to go to the, oh my gracious, I did it again. I probably should just redo this video, but I'm not. You know, it's okay for people to see that you're not perfect. People who think you've always got to be perfect, or that they are always perfect, are going to have a long, tough life, because nobody is. Okay, there we go. Now that we've got our dotted lines correct, we've got our shading correct, everything, go ahead and pause it. Make sure you've copied it down, and we'll do our last 2 examples. Now, last 2 examples, just like it was on the first page, they're both greater than. So we got greater than or equal to, and we got greater than. So what does that mean for us? That means this one's going to have a solid line. This one's going to have a dotted line. Okay. Now, if it's greater than, we're actually going to shade to the right. Because think about this, on the x-axis to go greater than, you got to go to the right. Okay, so let's do this. X is greater than or equal to -3. Go right here to -3 on the x-axis. We're going to draw in our line. Pull it down. I put my arrows. And again, it's greater than, so we need to be larger than, so we're going to be over here on the right. There we go. Now, if I want to do my last one, x is greater than 2, I go to 2. This is a dotted. So guys, I can do the dot trick just like I did with the horizontal. Just put dots going up and down. Put my arrows. Again, it's greater than, so I'm still going to be shading to the right. There you go. Now guys, pause it, make sure you've got everything copied down and get this into your interactive notebook. Then you'll use this to help you with your assignment on Canvas.